It's a beautiful bacon day, Cookie Crusaders. Today I'm going to be talking about my 3 favorite cookies. Now, this is not just a fluff video either. This is actually a video geared in cookies that I think are going to be making an impactful difference soon too. But they also coincidentally happen to be some of my favorite cookies of the game currently, just with their design and their overall playstyle. So Latte cookie is going to be the first of the 3. Biggest reason is just because the skill is so interesting. I love the fact that you get to conjure a glyph, just, a coffee glyph, which is even more fun, but the fact that you conjure a glyph that attracts the enemies to the center, dealing damage and silencing them. What's most fun about Latte is that she works in all game modes. Granted, she might not necessarily be keeping up with the meta in certain team setups, and that's fine, but when she is in the meta, she works in every single game mode, because with PvE, you can take her in and she can attract multiple enemies together so that you have those large swarms that get kind of eaten up by one single glyph. You have the ability to silence people so it pauses their skill cooldowns. Like, there's so many fun things that happens with Latte, and when you build her correctly, if you set the team up right, you can make her attack super powerful, and she can just dish out so much damage, because her single hit damage is 202%, but you gotta think that's just her regular attacks. When the inner glyph is hitting someone, it's doing 264%. And that glyph stays up for a few seconds. So, it's not just one single 264% hit, it's how long the enemies stay within that glyph. So it's just really fun. If you can stun enemies too, or stop their movement with like Devil Cookie, Wildberry, things like that, maybe Gingerbrave and Kumiho, then you can position it in a sense where everyone's just staying right there, just taking that inner glyph damage every single second until it fades away. So it's got some really fun, viable combinations, and it really just depends on the build. As you can see right now, I have critical toppings on Latte just because I want the most damage output. And running that, we have over 400,000 power just because of the sheer level of damage and base power level that comes on Latte as it is. Latte always had a really high power level, so in the early stage of the game last year when it was released, she had some pretty good impact on the meta. And if she gets a magic candy of any kind, she's going to be very similar to Espresso in the fact that she'll be super oppressive and super powerful. And I'm all for it. If that happens, I'd love to see it. I'd absolutely love to see it. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what we can make of it. But right now, that is cookie number 1. That is one of my favorites. Number 2 is Squid Ink. Squid Ink is interesting. We fought the raid boss battles for Squid Ink, and then we ended up actually getting Squid Ink as a cookie. That was pretty unique. I did not anticipate that happening, but I was pretty happy to see that come. So this was kind of like the first unique cookie that we got from a different game mode, and then we actually were able to play that cookie. So I was pretty happy about that. But in addition, there's what I call the teleport team, and she's part of it, where they get to relocate themselves for their skill usage, and they are not targetable because of their teleportation into a different position on the board. So I really love that she has that capability, but also that she does these giant tentacle slaps. Right now you can see that I have almonds set up on her because in some of the few teams that I have run her in, that's really the only viable setup at level 60. I'm going to be leveling her to level 70 soon, especially because hopefully with some of the new potential features coming out, she might pair along very well with them. It's hard to say. I'm not really going to guarantee it because I don't really know. It's all just speculations and leaks right now, and I don't really know if they're any bit true. So I'm not going to hope, but if it does work out like that, I'll be pretty excited. So the other thing that I really love about Squid Ink is that with her ability, even though it's 65% single hit damage, she does, I believe, either 7 or 8 tentacle slaps, and it hits every single cookie. So she's actually dealing like 450% times 7. So her damage output can be really big. If you set up searing or apple jellies on her, you can get some wild setups. And actually, even cooldowns work pretty well because of the 16-second timer. You want to get that ability popping off as fast as possible. So a cooldown setup is not terrible on her either. But I love what she does. If you can pump up magic units, if you can increase the attack, if you make Squid Ink the highest attacker and buff it with Financer and use a Claire for weakness, you can get some pretty wild combinations. So this is my second favorite cookie, and I hope to see more from her. I don't expect a magic cookie for Squid Ink anytime soon, to be honest, but I do hope to see some synergies with potential upcoming updates, if they're true. If they're not true, well, then we'll just see. And then my third favorite cookie is one of the newer ones. It's Oyster Cookie. The reason I love Oyster Cookie is that the way you build her is exactly how she runs. And I know that's kind of a weird statement, but with most cookies, if you build them with, let's say, 10% cooldown, they do their thing, they just do it slower than if you built them with 20% cooldown. And if you had 25% perfect cooldown, you would just be getting a faster version of the same cookie, which that's fine, that's great. But it's not unique, it's not different. With Oyster Cookie, if you do 10% cooldown, then you get 2 soldiers. If you do, I believe it's like 19% cooldown with a jelly clock, you get 3 soldiers. If you get up past 24.4% cooldown, you get 4 soldiers. But even better than that, even better, the higher your cooldown rate, the more attack damage the soldiers have too. And the thing is, they get an attack of 0.09% attack for every 1% cooldown, up to 50% attack. So that is not based on the attack power of Oyster. That is like directly based on what's happening from the cooldown itself. Now the soldier's shields, those are based on her HP and defense. The overall Oyster soldier's caster's attack, those come with 78% of her base attack itself. So to kind of put that in perspective, you can set her up a little bit differently than other summoners. A lot of summoners, you use attack as a substat because you want the summoned creatures to have higher attack. But if you're like, you know what, I really, really want high survivability, you can do cooldown, defense, and HP as your full 3 substats to focus on for this cookie. If you do that, you're going to have really bulky, really tanky soldiers that have really high attack if you have perfect cooldown, because they'll have 78% of your base attack, which would be about 48,000 of what mine currently is. And then you put a 50% attack bonus on that, which means each soldier is going to be doing roughly about 60,000 damage like a hit. So it's pretty viable. And that's why when you see some of the matches I've posted with Oyster, because she's running such high cooldown, she can burst out 1,000,000 damage within a second, because it just hits like a truck. Now, if you get the topping set up with more attack substats, you're going to do even more. So right now, I don't have that. I don't have damage resistance. I don't have attack. So I have defense, HP, and cooldown. So that's doable. I would, of course, like damage resistance, but I don't have that. So I at least focused on having high defense and high HP, since I'm going to have high cooldown. So if you get that high attack substat, because you can get up to 15% on cooldowns, then that means you would go from the base of 60,000, at least at the levels that I'm at, add 15%, you're going to have about 75,000, about maybe 72,000 attack. Add a 50% attack bonus on that with perfect cooldown, then you're coming in with like over 110,000 attack for each soldier. Like you're just going to be hitting like a truck. So there's some really fun ways to just pump that higher. And honestly, because Oyster has such a high base attack, you can get Financer's buff on Oyster in certain team matchups, which means that you can just make soldiers come out super powerful. But you have to have Financer at a perfect cooldown too. You need Financer to run first, which is almost never going to happen. So you kind of want to line it up in the sense that you either get a really fast boost to get the next soldiers out, or you want to run Financer at a slower speed so that the time that buff lasts for the attack boost on Oyster lines up with the second set of soldiers coming out, because Oyster's cooldown's very quick because of the way her skill set up. So there's a lot of fun and interesting ways to put that together, but yeah, it can be pretty strong. So those are my 3 current favorite cookies based on design, based on skills. They're super fun. They're not so oppressive that you hate seeing them in the arena, but rather they're just more interesting and fun to play with when you do run them. And I hope that they're gonna play some different strategies in the coming updates. Like I said, I can't really guarantee anything just because they're leaks, but we will see. I'm excited to see. But tell me your 3 favorite cookies in the comments. I would like to hear. But tell me why. Don't just say their names. Like, tell me why they're your favorite cookies. What is it about their design? What do you love about their skill? You know, is it the 3 ancients? Is it the 2 super epics and Dark Cacao? Like, who are your favorite cookies? I'd like to know. Thank you so much for stopping by. Have a wonderful day.